For the first time since 2020, the Pittsburgh Steelers are AFC North champions, and they did so by way of a wild game on Sunday Night Football to close out the entire season for the NFL, at least the regular season. And it's funny because it was 2 weeks ago that I sat here on this channel and said, I don't think there has been a crazier game or crazier finish to a game in the last 5 years than what we saw happen between the Steelers and the Detroit Lions in week 16. And yet, I think they surpassed it on Sunday Night Football. I mean, when you consider the stakes, it's win or go home for a divisional title, for a playoff spot, for a home playoff game on Super Wild Card weekend. And then you look at the game itself, 4 lead changes in the fourth quarter, 2 blown coverages by the Steelers that figured to be the dagger in their season, and yet they're able to still come away with the victory to beat a team that is their most hated rival. I think we topped it. But the Pittsburgh Steelers at the end of the day are headed to the postseason, will host the Houston Texans on Monday Night Football to cap off Super Wildcard weekend after a 26-24 victory over the Baltimore Ravens. And man, there is a lot of things to get into about this game before we turn our attention to Houston and the NFL postseason, which is always a better position to be in than the one that the folks in Baltimore are in right now. So you can say whatever you want about the Steelers season, but at the end of the day, they got into the dance. And once you get into the dance, anything's possible. We've seen it with Pittsburgh Steelers in the past, be the 6th seed and go all the way. They're the 4th seed, which means they do get a home playoff game. And honestly, with the way the AFC is shaping out, there's a chance they have more than one home playoff game. I mean, the quarterback with the best resume outside of Aaron Rodgers is Josh Allen, and he's currently the 6th seed in the AFC. So anything is possible from here on out. But let's close the chapter of the regular season before we look ahead to that. I mean, if you're looking at Sunday night's game, you have to start with Cam Heyward. This was a Cam Heyward legacy game. Not often does a defensive tackle lead the team in tackles. Not just total tackles. He had 7 where he led the team, but solo tackles, he had 5. He added on a QB hit. He was part of the deflection that led to the one and only turnover in the game. And then he was just dominant up front otherwise. I mean, it was just a masterclass at that position by Cam Heyward. At the age of 36, he continues to just put the cherry on top of his career. I mean, I think we all know what's missing from Cam Heyward's career, and he's not shy about talking about it, and that's postseason success. But that's a story for a week from now. That's a story for hopefully a month from now if the Steelers are still playing. But you look at what he was able to do in week 18, that is a legacy performance for Cam Heyward on a national stage where everybody gets to see just how special he is. That's a game that you point to 5 years after he retires and says, man, that is a Canton resume building performance from Cam Heyward. He did all of that and more. Let's not forget, the Steelers lost Darnell Washington in Cleveland. They needed somebody to step up and help that tush push that has been so successful, so pivotal for this team. And it was again on Sunday night. Yes, they failed on 4th and 2, but that was also the first time they were trying it since Darnell Washington went down with his broken arm. The rest of the game, it worked, and it worked well. I'm hoping at some point, and I know the road is very narrow here, to use a Mike Tomlin saying, but I hope at some point we see Cam Heyward get the ball in that. You know, they do a little bit of trickeration, right? Sometimes they send it out as a sweep. Sometimes Connor Heyward turns around and pitches it. Sometimes he, hands it off. I think more often than not, you're going to see him just go straight forward because that's the point of the play. But if there's a redirection, I wouldn't mind seeing Cam Heyward get into the end zone. I mean, it's always fun when a big man with a jersey in the 90s gets into the end zone. So that would be a lot of fun. But at the end of the day, I think this was a statement for Cam Heyward and a statement for the Steelers defense. Because all season long, I mean, you go back to the Miami game on Monday Night Football, Cam Heyward was the guest on the panel following the game on the field. And he was asked the question, how can you guys keep this momentum going? How can you guys finish off the Ravens, win the AFC North, make it to the postseason, and then make noise when you get there? And Cam Heyward's message was clear and simple at that point in time. Stop the run. Stop the run. It is his prerogative. It is something that he's trying to lead a very young defensive line to step up and do, right? I mean, Keanu Benton is in his third year, but still a very young player. He had himself a really good game. He was very visual in this game. A lot of times defensive tackles aren't as visual. They're not making the plays as much as clogging up lanes and taking up blockers. He was making plays. Derek Harmon was the opposite. He was a guy that wasn't, making the plays. He wasn't on the stat sheet as much, but he was taking up blockers. It's almost as if the Baltimore Ravens knew, hey, if we want to run the ball successfully, Derek Harmon is a guy we need to take out of the game. They tried to, and that's when guys like Cam Heyward stepped up. That's when guys like Keanu Benton stepped up. That's when guys like Y.A. Black stepped up. Shoot, Logan Lee had a really nice play in this game. So it was a statement from Cam Heyward, who is the leader of that defensive line. Derrick Henry, yeah, if you look at his total stat sheet, he had himself a typical game against the Steelers. Over 120 yards rushing, and for the most part, if you didn't watch the game, you'd probably say, man, the Steelers' run defense didn't perform all that well. But what I'll say is this. They didn't perform well on the first drive. 45 yards allowed to Derrick Henry on the first drive. From that point onward, and again, this is a game for the division title, coming off of a game where Derrick Henry absolutely gashed the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau Field on Christmas week. The rest of the game, he had only 81 yards. For King Henry, that's slowing him down. I'm not going to go as far as to say they shut him down, because they didn't. Nobody really shuts down King Henry unless your name is John Harbaugh and you just don't give him the opportunity. But the Steelers' defensive line, I would say, did a very good job against the best running back that they are going to see the rest of this season. James Cook is up there, but none of them are as difficult to stop as Derrick Henry. So the fact that they got the job done on Sunday night means that they're going to be able to get the job done, or at the very least, they have the tools to get the job done the remainder of the season. Let's move on from Cam Heyward. I'm sure we'll have plenty to discuss about Cam as time goes on. And let's talk a little bit about Nick Herbig. This was an interesting game because Nick Herbig had been playing well in the absence of TJ Watt. But TJ Watt said early in the week, hey, I'm coming back for this one. Like, this is for not all the marbles. It's not a Super Bowl game, but it's for all the marbles in the AFC North. It's to make the postseason, which at the end of the day, that's endgame for the Steelers. It doesn't matter what they do in the regular season this year. We all knew that coming in. They needed to get a playoff victory, and you can't do that if you don't make the playoffs. So TJ Watt, make sure that he's coming back. And your question is, well, how much does this affect Nick Herbig, who had been playing well? How much does it affect Jack Sawyer, who looked to be playing at a level that is not equivalent to a fourth stringer, which is what he is for the Steelers? Well, TJ Watt played pretty dang good. Alex Highsmith had a really good game, and so too did Nick Herbig. He got a sack early in the game where he absolutely blew up the Ravens running back en route to sacking Lamar Jackson. And that was in what I want to see more of, which is a 3-edge set. We've been calling for this for a while. I know a lot of people have said, you have to move TJ Watt around. Well, you don't if you have other guys that can take advantage of the one-on-ones, and they do. More often than not, Cam Heyward's going to win a one-on-one. More often than not, Alex Highsmith is going to win a one-on-one. And I think that can be applied to Nick Herbig as well. So seeing that exotic look is something that I think the Steelers need to do a lot more of, especially when it comes to next week with, yes, not a rookie, but a still relatively inexperienced quarterback in CJ Stroud. And then you look at the last drive for the Ravens. Nick Herbig almost made the play of the game. How often do we talk about game-sealing plays on the defensive side of the ball? There's the strip sack from TJ Watt in this series between the Ravens and the Steelers. There's, Troy Polamalu, pick sixes galore. There is, interceptions at the goal line by Micah Fitzpatrick. There's a lot of plays that ice games in this series between the Steelers and Ravens. Nick Herbig almost put one of those in his tool belt. He almost did. 3rd down and 7. The Ravens are 20 yards away from what everybody expected to be Tyler Loop's field goal range. And before Lamar Jackson can even look downfield, Nick Herbig beats his blocker, flushes Lamar out of the pocket, and stays with him. That had been the problem for a couple of these plays where the Steelers got early pressure. They got a little too over their heels, and Lamar was able to wiggle out of it. I mean, look at one of the Zay Flowers touchdowns. Alex Highsmith, and I believe that was Cam Heyward, they had him wrapped up, and he just burst through and was able to hit Zay Flowers over the head of Patrick Queen. But this time, Nick Herbig said no. Nick Herbig stayed with him. He got everything but the sack. He just couldn't get that throwing arm under control. And Lamar Jackson, he really didn't even throw it. He just kind of, as I knocked my water bottle over, he just kind of just whipped it out of bounds. A huge play in the game. And if it wasn't for a crazy fourth down conversion where, again, one step away from TJ Watt making the game-ending play and just knocking it down away by Jalen Ramsey from ending the game as well, Nick Herbig would have had himself a seminal moment in his career. But the last thing I need to talk about here for this week's game, and then we'll turn the page and we'll put out a video about Steelers and Texans and getting you ready for a playoff game, and can the Steelers end the drought of not having playoff wins? We'll get to that later in the week. But man, this is the type of performance that you signed Aaron Rodgers for. 31 of 47, 294 pass yards, 1 touchdown, and guess what? What we've come to know from Aaron Rodgers in the back half of this season, 0 turnovers. That's been the key, right? Aaron Rodgers had some glimpses early in the season, especially you look at that game against the Jets, he was phenomenal. You look at a couple other games early in the season, he was really good. But in the back half of the season, he's really started to get stronger. I believe he used the term Benjamin Button, which I think accurately depicts his story of the regular season. And you hope that it extends into the postseason. But if you look at what kind of the key factor is in all of that, no turnovers. He hasn't turned the ball over in 5 weeks. He hasn't thrown an interception in any of the last 7 games. And he's gotten stronger, not just as the season has gone on, but he's gotten stronger as the game has gone on in a lot of these weeks and games as well. 196 of his 294 passing yards were in the second half of this one. Just an absolute masterclass by Aaron Rodgers in the second half against the Baltimore Ravens in a gotta-have-it game, not just for the season, but potentially, nobody knows but Aaron, but potentially for his entire career. And he went out there and he did just what Aaron Rodgers does with a depleted group of weapons, right? DK Metcalf is on the shelf because of a suspension. Darnell Washington, who I don't think was talked about enough on the broadcast on Sunday, was on the shelf due to a broken arm. They're not getting him back. He was a huge part of this offense this year because when Aaron Rodgers wanted to dump it down, he had 2 options. He could go to Kenneth Gainwell or Jaylen Warren, or he could go to Darnell Washington. It felt like there was always a dump down on either side, and it was 2 different versions. You could either get it with Kenneth Gainwell. If he has a one-on-one, he could probably make the guy miss. If you throw it to Darnell Washington and he has a one-on-one, he's running the guy over and he's getting the first down. So you take not only your deep threat away, not only your number 1 receiver away, but you take away one of your dump down options. So then the Ravens can focus solely on the running back. It makes the game a little bit harder for a quarterback. And yet he was able to find a way. He was able to connect with MVS, which he wasn't able to do in Cleveland. He was able to connect on a big play with Adam Thielen. He was able to connect a lot with Pat Freiermuth, something I want to see more of as we head into the postseason. But I think this is where the difference is. And this is where the difference has always been in having Aaron Rodgers versus any other option the Steelers could have brought in this year. I said it last February, whenever the name was first brought up. At that point, I was on All Steelers Talk with Noah Strackbine, and we were discussing the thought process of potentially bringing in Aaron Rodgers. And I said, and he agreed, that this is not a move that changes your regular season ceiling. Maybe 1 game, but that's it. Last year, they were a 10-win team. Guess what? This year, with Aaron Rodgers, they're still a 10-win team. And yet, the vibe is completely different around this team. And why is that? Because in moments like we saw on Sunday night, you would much rather have Aaron Rodgers, even at this stage of his career, than any of the other quarterbacks you've had since Ben Roethlisberger decided to retire a few years ago. Because Aaron Rodgers is a clutch professional that knows how to slow the game down in the biggest moments and knows how to perform when the lights are the brightest. He's done it before. He's been in every situation. And that's what shined through on Sunday. Somebody that can just grab the torch and drag everybody with him across the finish line. Russell Wilson lacked that conviction. Justin Fields lacked that conviction. Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett, they all lacked what Aaron Rodgers has to give. He's able to navigate those pressure situations in a way that honestly few others in the NFL could do right now, because the quarterback position is very young overall throughout the league. Having a veteran, yes, it has its downsides. He wasn't able to get one of those first downs when he had to just use his legs. Why? Because he just can't get there. He can't get the 8 yards. Now, he was able to do it later in the game, which is great. But his mobility is sometimes to a detriment. He's 42 years old. That's going to happen. But you take the good with the bad, and the good is he thinks the game at a level that few others can, is that as the game goes on, if you show him more on the defensive side, he's going to pick it apart when the game is at its peak. And that's what he did to Baltimore on Sunday. Was it a big factor that Kyle Hamilton was out? 100%. But it doesn't matter if Aaron Rodgers isn't able to take advantage of that fact. And I think he took advantage of that fact. You saw the Steelers successfully go over the top a lot more after Kyle Hamilton's injury. So a huge game, a huge performance by Aaron Rodgers, and the exact performance that the Steelers were able to go out and get him for. This is when the rubber meets the road with Aaron Rodgers. This is the level that Aaron Rodgers changes in this team, is in clutch time, in big moments late in the season. He's the guy you want under center. That even whenever his helmet isn't working and he can't hear the offensive coordinators, he can get the job done. He can get the Steelers in the end zone, and he can get the victory. It was a huge game, a huge win, a win that I don't think any Steelers fan is going to forget anytime soon. But again, it'll mean a heck of a lot more if they're able to, I wouldn't say get the job done next week, because the job is 4 more victories, but if they're able to continue this season beyond next Monday night. But that's going to do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this one. Remember, you can find all of my work here at Nick Belsky on YouTube. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to this video, and we'll have more for you leading up to the Super Wildcard Weekend matchup between the Steelers and the Houston Texans. We'll see you guys next time.